Does the hazy skies have you concerned and wondering what you can do for your health during this time of smoke-filled air? The great thing is, there's quite a bit you can do. There's some very easy, simple steps that you can take. Today I'm going to share with you 7 easy to do, simple steps to support your health, and some of them include herbs. So especially if you live in the US, you have probably noticed or at least heard on the news that there's this orange haze that has been covering the skies throughout the country, especially in the Northeast. Now that's because obviously there's a lot of fires going on in Canada, and that smoke has been making its way down, covering over not just Canada, but the US itself and a lot of various states. And it's becoming a really detrimental issue to many people that live within these regions, making it very difficult to be outside and perform normal duties. And it's also starting to bring up a lot of health concerns that might be deep within the body that are raising up and being stimulated because of the smoke, whether it's respiratory issues or autoimmune issues. And I'm getting a lot of calls lately from clients wondering what they can do to best support themselves. So today I want to share with you some easy ways that you can go about supporting not just your physical health in your body, but also your emotional health as well, as it often takes a very big toll at this time. Now, as the fires burn, they cause not just smoke to be cast out throughout into the air, but also that air itself carries with it toxins, because unfortunately it's not just the trees that are being burned, but it can be people's homes and other debris, automobiles. So that smoke actually carries a lot of toxic aspects with it. So it's not the best thing to be breathing in. Never mind making it very hard to see depending on the locations that you live in. And that smoke can be very irritating to the body, especially in the throat and in the lungs, and it can really dry out the tissue, making it disruptive to try to breathe and can obviously cause a lot of asthma to flare up. But before we get into any of the health issues and ways of supporting yourself that way, first, let's talk about how this in itself can be impacting your levels of stress right now. Now, we know that obviously smoke is not the best thing for our lungs. That's pretty understandable. But when it comes to smoke impacting your stress levels, that might not be something that you can clearly see. And it really does happen. And it happens for many reasons. First, you have the aspect that you might be afraid to just breathe the air that you're in. And whenever your body is afraid of something, that increases your stress levels. And especially when it comes to breathing in general, because we need to breathe every second of the day. There's just nothing we can do about it. And when you don't feel safe and comfortable to breathe, that can create a lot of hesitation and tension every time you take in a breath. You can also kind of halt yourself a little bit and have some resistance to breathing gently like you normally would. So it might be harder to take in a nice slow inhale and exhale like you normally would. Your breathing might become a little bit more shallow or rapid, and it doesn't feel as comfortable. And it's for good reason when you feel like you can't trust the air that you're currently in. It's completely understandable, and it's very expected to be happening. So don't be alarmed if that's what's going on. Now, in addition to the tension of just breathing in air that doesn't feel the safest or the cleanest, there's also tension that comes up sometimes from earlier trauma that we occurred in our life and sometimes in previous lives. Sometimes there's resistance whenever we feel like we can't get a really deep, good breath of clean, fresh air. So it can bring up hesitation. So that in itself obviously brings in levels of stress into our lives. So what can you do to support yourself right now? Not in just your lungs, but your whole body, including your stress levels. So tip number 1, stay inside. I know it's pretty obvious, but it's not always the easiest thing to do right now, especially if you have to work or attend to things outside. But the more you can stay inside right now, the better. Give yourself the time to try to step away and hibernate a little bit, or just try to do the things that you can do from inside. If you can work at home, great. Try just to limit the time that you are outside right now, just for the next few days if possible, or any time that the air isn't the best of quality. That brings me to tip number 2. So obviously we need to go outside. We might need to drive to work, or we might work outside in general. So try to wear a mask if you can. I know, we're all completely tired of the wearing mask aspect, but they're there for a reason. And especially right now, masks are what are meant to filter particles. So they're really good for helping yourself if you need to be outside. Preferably an N95 is best, but do whatever you can. So go pull out the mask out of your closet if you still have them. And if you need to be outside for any extended period of time, it's a great thing to do. Now, trust me, I know how difficult it is. As a farmer, I had to be outside yesterday wearing a mask while trying to plant inside the heat. It's not the easiest thing to do, but you're trying to protect your lungs and your body to stay safe and healthy. Tip number 3, if you have an air filter in your home, make sure to use it or bring it to work. It's really good at helping to filter out any impurities in the air. Just make sure to replace the filters as they're kind of being overloaded at the moment. Tip number 4. Now we're getting into the ones that are not so obvious. This one is to work on your breathing. Try to take some slow and deep breaths in and out whenever you feel safe. So when you can go inside, or when you're inside your car, maybe even driving to work, take in a few slow, deep breaths in and out. Allow yourself to have that space to do so, because the great thing is it'll help release some of that tension that might be pent up. And you're counteracting what you're doing throughout the day by holding in your breath a little bit. So by allowing yourself the chance to breathe in and out slowly, instantly tells your nervous system that everything is okay, even if you don't think it is. Allowing your brain to ease and relax so that you can feel the same inside. Tip number 5, drink some extra fluids, especially water. Your throat mucous membranes that all run down this area can be extra inflamed right now. So making sure that you get plenty of nourishment in through water and beverages is really essential, because it helps soothe those irritations and also helps dilute any toxins that you might have been breathing in. Speaking of fluids brings me to tip number 6, herbs. Herbs are really amazing for helping your body at this time. But before we get into specifics of what herbs I like to recommend, we first need to talk about the energetics that go on, because everything contains within it different aspects of the varying elements. And when it comes to fire, we can obviously tell that fire is the element of fire. So smoke, which comes from fire because it burns things up, is also the element of fire. And fire is very heating or warming and very drying and irritating. So that element, when you're breathing it in, does the same thing inside your body. So in herbal medicine, what we like to do is work with the opposites to help create balance. So when it comes to using plants, we use plants that have more of a watery energy, because they by nature are cooling and moistening. So they help bring balance to the body, help counteracting what's going on that's an imbalance. So we focus on herbs that are very watery herbs to help bring a soothing, nourishing aspect during this time. Now there's many herbs that are of the watery element, and pretty much any of them can be really helpful at this time. But I'm going to share with you 3 of the ones that I really like to work with when it comes to supporting the lungs. The first one is mullein, or Verbascum thapsus, as you can see here. Now mullein is a weed that grows wild in many people's yards and gardens, and it often grows in disturbed areas, and it comes up and it has these really tall spikes to them with beautiful yellow flowers. Now, many plants really key into various parts of the body. And when it comes to mullein, it keys directly into the lungs, as that is what it's known for supporting the most. It's very soothing and moistening and has that cooling quality. So it comes in and kind of imagine it coating the lungs themselves, helping to soothe and nourish all of the lining within them. And it does the same thing with all of your mucous membranes. So any of this inner tissue right here, inside from your mouth, all the way down to your anus, is actually referred to as mucous membrane tissue. So it helps soothe that aspect of it. Now, mullein is so amazing for supporting the lungs that I often use it the most when it comes to supporting ex-smokers, as it really helps get deep into the lungs and even can help bring up old remnants from when they used to smoke, and often allows you to help cough it out when you start working with mullein. So it's really great for releasing any impurities that might be left behind in the lungs while it's working to soothe any irritated tissues or inflamed tissues. Now, the part that we use when it comes to mullein is the leaf of the plant that's most often used when it comes to supporting the lungs. You can see it there as I drop it down. Now, the only warning when it comes to mullein is, ironically, herbs kind of work in opposites, like I mentioned. But with mullein, the leaves actually have these little hairs on them that can be very irritating to the lungs themselves when you drink it in tea form. And that's how we use it most often, is in tea. So you want to make sure you strain it through a piece of fabric, or a coffee filter would be really nice, instead of a mesh strainer or cheesecloth, as the holes are too big, so the hairs would get through. But if you use a piece of cloth, there'll be no problem whatsoever and no irritation. Now, the second plant I want to mention is marshmallow, Althea officinalis. Now, marshmallow is really superior when it comes to soothing those mucous membranes, as it has what's called demulcent qualities, because within it has something that's called mucilage. And mucilage is this slimy substance that helps coat things. Think of if you've ever had okra, or you cook with chia seeds, or even oatmeal. It can get that slimy quality. That's the mucilage that's coming out. And it's really, really amazing for helping to get in your body and soothe all those mucous membranes and help heal up any irritated and damaged tissue. So it's really good for that purpose. So because of that, it's great for the lungs. Now, the part we use most often is the root. Here it's cut up nice and fine, and you can make it into tea form. You can also use it in little, what's known as pastilles, where it can be combined sometimes, kind of like lozenges with honey. And it's really good for helping to coat the throat and help with any irritations that are going on. And marshmallow has no irritating hairs, so you don't have to worry about that with this one. Now, the third plant I want to mention is called licorice, Glycyrrhiza glabra. Now, it's probably a plant that you might have heard of without thinking it's a plant. You probably heard of licorice candy. Well, it's not the same thing. Most licorice candy does not come from actual true licorice, but it kind of has a little bit of the same flavor. Licorice gets that name, well, the candy gets its name from licorice because it's very sweet by nature. And for some people, it's actually too sweet and they don't really like the taste of it. It depends on the person, but it does have that sweetness in it, and that sweetness allows it to be nourishing to the body in many, many different ways. Now, the part that we use is the root. As you can see here, it's all cut up. Now, with licorice, it's similar to the others to where it has that cooling and soothing aspect, and it does key in for helping out with the lungs as well. Now, what's really nice about licorice too is that you can find it often a lot easier than the other plants, because a lot of times you can go into your local grocery store and find teas that are specific for sore throats, and very often it contains licorice root within it. And you can also find licorice pastilles or lozenges in natural health food stores, sold as licorice lozenges or deglycerized licorice root. Now, one of the things though to take note when it comes to licorice is it does tend to elevate blood pressure, especially if you consume it in large quantities or very frequently. So if you already tend to run high with your blood pressure, that's something to take note, and this might be a plant you want to avoid. Now, you might not have any herbs on hand. So that brings us to our final tip, tip number 7, and that is using cool compresses. You can simply take a washcloth and put some cool to coldish water on it and apply it to your chest. This can be very soothing to the skin and bring in that water element. And that's because the water gently goes into your body, not in a literal sense, but more in an energetic sense, helping to cool your inside from the outside. So it can be really nice to use if you don't have any herbs on hand, to bring in that cooler aspect to soothe any irritation. The same can be applied to your throat in general as well. So I really hope these tips help you out and give you some good inspiration. Now, if you need more support when it comes to supporting your stress, especially at times like these, you can visit the link below that I'll include, and you can get a free copy of my ebook that is Using Herbs to Support Inner Calm, which goes over some additional herbs that focus specifically on supporting stress and things that you can do to help yourself. It's completely free. You can just go ahead and grab the link below and get your copy. Take care, and I really hope that you have some nourishing water energy bringing into your life right now. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and a subscribe.